Let's point out a couple things here. The first thing is this small little Bessie clamp. That thing is a miracle worker that will hold a lot of items that I have to work on. The second thing we want to talk about is when we're sanding, let's not forget the original palm sander. And I'll show you where I'm going with this. So while we all want to use our automated machines to sand up this curve right here, sometimes we have to use the original palm sander and break out a piece of sandpaper and let's just go clean up what we need to clean up and make it look really good. Because when you're using that orbital sander, sometimes you can't see some of the spots that you need to see, that you can see while you're sanding. So I can see that I've got a couple of spots in here that need to be cleaned up. I can sand this by hand with the original palm sander. So let's get this one done and let's move on to the next step. Okay, so we have the first part done, and for the record, the first thing I did is I used this 3M Cubitron, I think I'm calling it, 80 grit to clean up. And the reason that I did that, now I did this on my oscillating sander just to clean up the edges after running it through my trim bit on my router table. But even after doing that, as I sanded, I could feel some spots that were off. Maybe they were a little flat. Maybe the sander over there hit them and they messed them up a little bit. But by doing it by hand, even with 80 grit, I can feel that, and you want to clean those up. Because if you're making a project for a client and they're paying for this, you want this to be as good as possible. Even if you're not paying for this, you want this to be as good as possible. So what do we do next? Now we go to 120 grit because I want to spend as much time on 120 grit on these sides as I did on 80. I just don't want to zip through it because I want to clean up whatever scratches the 80 grit may have left. So we'll spend as much time with 120 grit as we did with 80. So let's move on with that and we'll see what we can get done. All right, so there we go. So here's my point when it comes to me sanding, and we all hate to sand, and no matter who you are. So I have a template. I created the shape with the bandsaw. Then I took the shape to a template on the router table with the trim bit and created the shape on the actual wood. And then I used my oscillating orbital sander to clean up my edges. But you could always see that there's pieces that maybe the sander couldn't get into, maybe here or down into here, where I can get into by hand. But as you start to sand by hand using that original palm sander that God provided, you can feel where the wood might just be a little bit off, and you can hit that with a piece. You can feel that inside the sandpaper. Clean that up, and you'll end up with a great looking product, whether it be for your bride, someone else in your family, or in this instance, for my client who wanted a replica of her mother-in-law's towel rack.